Hello, everyone, and welcome to Adobe FrameMaker Essentials. I am Barb Binder, and I'm back to talk to you about Adobe FrameMaker 2022 in the unstructured environment. This webinar is targeting new users, and specifically the users who are asked by their office to start working on a FrameMaker document, maybe editing a file or working on creating a new chapter for an existing document, who need to start, but they haven't had FrameMaker training yet. I've said so many times over the years that FrameMaker is not hard to use, but it's really hard to teach yourself. There are certain mistakes that new users make over and over again, and this is meant to help you learn what those are and avoid them. I'm going to give you tips that you want to do, things you want to look into a little bit more, and also things not to do. Now, if this is your first webinar with me, I'm Barb Binder. For the past 20 years, I've been living in the mountains in Colorado, but we moved to the Olympic Peninsula this past summer. So I'm now in Washington State, and I'm in the rain shadow of the Olympic Mountains. Besides that, nothing has changed. I'm still training on FrameMaker. I'm still volunteering on the forums, and I'm still recording these webinars. So as far as you're concerned, I'm still here. Just here is someplace different. And if you want to stay in touch with me after the webinar, grab a screenshot of this page. You're welcome to email me. There's resources on my blog. But I want to remind everyone that the quickest way to get answers to questions about FrameMaker is to ask us on the FrameMaker community forum. This is the link, shows you how to get there. There are a lot of us on the forum ready to answer your questions. If I'm not around, somebody else will be. You'll get your questions answered and be ready to go. So in this webinar, I want to focus on the 5 steps I think that every new user needs to understand and not just gloss over. The first one is how to leverage the interface. A lot of people open up FrameMaker, they look at it and they think, I don't know what anything here is. Let's not figure it out. Let's jump into a document and I'm sure I can just edit it the way I edit things in Word or on my phone. Don't do that. First, learn the interface. Then you can get into editing, which is pretty easy as you probably will figure out. But you may have to add some text. I want to show you how to do that and also how to handle the formatting of the text that you're adding. Spoiler alert, don't use manual formatting and please don't use overrides. Rely on styles, and only styles. That's going to give you the quick application of formatting, but also the consistency of the formatting across a long document. Headers and footers are confusing for a new user. They can see them, but they don't know how to edit them or how to modify anything about the repeating elements. I want to talk about master pages with you. And then I want to show you how to add artwork to a document and how to control how the artwork flows with the text as you edit. That's called anchoring. And finally, I want to show you how to create a PDF so that you can share your finished document with other people. Let's go ahead and start with the interface. So the first thing I'd like you to do is stop and look at the FrameMaker interface and figure it out so you can use it to your advantage and not be fighting it. I want to talk about preferences, toolbars, dialog boxes, panels, and saving the toolbars and the panels as a workspace. Let's go take a look. So here we are in FrameMaker 2022. And this is the welcome screen that greets you each time you start a FrameMaker session or after you close all your open documents. I'm going to click on the portrait preset down here on the bottom left of my screen to create a new portrait document, just one blank piece of paper, but I can use this to talk about the interface. So I suspect everyone recognizes that the menus run across the top of the screen. Take a few minutes as a new user to look at each of the menus and get a sense of FrameMaker's organization. That's going to help you find the commands when you need them. Underneath the menus, we have toolbars. And if you're looking for more toolbars, you can go to the View menu and click on Toolbars and show additional toolbars. I think some of them are very helpful and some of them are dangerous. In particular, I think the text formatting toolbar is dangerous because it encourages new users to manually format because they see buttons up here for bold and italic and underline, and they're not using styles like they're supposed to. I keep it on my screen because I've always got one eye on the font and the size because I'm looking for problems in my files. files coming from Word often bring in different fonts and unusual sizes. So I like having it on screen, but you're not going to ever see me click these buttons over here because that's going to slow me down and cause issues. I'll talk more about that in another part of this video. And then under the toolbars, we have our document window, and then to the right, we have all the panels. Now, panels are going to support your workflow, and what's important to understand about panels is that they stay on your screen. You can have a panel visible, go do something else, and then come back to your panel again. And this is different from a dialog box. Let me show you one of those. I'm going to go to the Edit menu with you and come all the way down to Preferences, because I think new users that are using Unstructured FrameMaker should do two things right off the bat. The first one is to go to the General category in the left column and make sure the product interface is set to FrameMaker. It will default to Structured FrameMaker, and if you're not planning on using Structured FrameMaker, you don't want all that extra stuff on your screen. Choose FrameMaker from the product interface. And before you leave, take another minute to go back to the left column and click on Interface. I think it's really helpful to have colored icons enabled. This is on the right side of that dialog box. Colored icons are going to add color to the buttons up here. I'm very color focused. I know where my buttons are, but I also know the color. It helps me find them faster if the colored icons are on. When they're all grayscale, they all blend in together for me. Now, if you change one or both of those two commands, you have to restart FrameMaker for them to take effect. I didn't change either one, so I can click on OK. But if you're working on your own and you change either of these or both, you're going to be asked to restart FrameMaker. So do that and then come on back. Now, a dialog box doesn't stay on screen, and for the most part, that's great because we only use dialog boxes occasionally. They hold things you can change, a few times. This I might not ever change again. So I can pick OK and it's gone. And that differentiates them from the panels that stay on your screen. And FrameMaker uses panels to have a lot of the functionality. The panels are available primarily in the View menu under Panels, but all of them are not listed there. Some of them are scattered throughout the other menus. As you're using FrameMaker and you realize, oh, I need to do some task, and you look up how to do it, you'll probably open up a panel to support that. Let's say that you want to work on cross-references. Well, then you'd go to Panels and open up the cross-references panel, and it's going to show up. Here's where mine came in, and it's going to show up over on your dock. Or sometimes it might show up undocked, in which case you can grab it and put it over in your dock. You can decide how you want to arrange these panels. It's completely up to you. A workspace is going to control the visibility of the toolbars you want to use and the panels. And what you're looking for is a workspace that supports your workflow. It has all the toolbars and panels you need every day, and none of the ones that you're never going to use. Just get them off the screen. Don't have clutter. If you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm never going to use cross-references, in that case, you could undock it and then close it, and you won't see it again until you go back up and you ask for it because you realize, oh, I guess I am going to be using cross-references. It takes some time to figure out what panels you want on screen. Once you get them organized the way you like them, you want to save them as a workspace. And in my intro class, we create a workspace based on the design workspace. So very quickly, looking at my screen, we come up to the menu. This is the workspace menu. We pick design. And design is one of FrameMaker's default workspaces. And then we just modify this workspace to add the panels that will support the classroom workflow. So we do things like we collapse the panels so they're not using quite as much room. And then we go to the View menu, we go to Panels, and we add additional panels that we're going to need. For example, the paragraph catalog gets added, and then we undock it, and we redock it in a place that makes sense. Now, what makes sense to me may not make sense to you. Workspaces can be completely customized for you. And while I might love my workspaces, you might not. And you can create your own workspaces just the way you want. The takeaway is not, oh, Barb's workspace, that's what she likes. The takeaway is you can control the display of these toolbars and these panels. You can put them where you want, and you can arrange them. And then once they are doing their job, they are supporting your workflow, You want to remember that you can open this workspace menu and you can save a workspace under a new name. And that way you can access your workspace whenever you want it. I'm going to take just a minute to show you two existing workspaces. These don't come with FrameMaker. The first one, as I said, is one that we create in class together based on the design workspace. We call it Learning FrameMaker, so my students remember they made it while they were in class. It looks similar to what I started to create with you. It has all the catalogs open where we can see them, and it has the panels we'll be using during that class, at least at the beginning. And then as we add additional panels, we dock them and we save the workspace again. It can take a few days, or for a new user, potentially a few weeks, to tweak these panels and put them exactly where you want them and get all the ones open that you need to use and realize there's some you're never going to use and close those. But once you get it all organized, you want to stop and save them. That's save workspace and save over the old one so that you have the up-to-date workspace and you can access it whenever you need it. Before we go, I'm going to show you one more workspace. It's called the layout workspace. It's a lot more complicated than the one we create in class. This is one I use when I'm by myself. And you'll notice it has another toolbar at the top. I'm not using these buttons over here, but I keep it open because I want to watch the font and the size. I'm looking for overrides while I'm working. And then I like my panels docked on the left-hand side. And I've got a lot more panels on the right-hand side that are all available, and they're very carefully grouped in a way that makes sense to me. You'll make a workspace that makes sense to you. That's what's important here. That's the takeaway. Look up workspaces, learn how to create these workspaces and how to dock these panels in a way that you like, and then make sure that you save that workspace so that if you ever have a problem and you mess things up, you can come back and just reset it. Now, before I go, I want to say one more thing. On the bottom of your FrameMaker document window, there's a status bar, and it's got a few things in there that are super important. In the bottom middle, you have page navigation. There's lots of ways of moving through a FrameMaker document. Logically, you'll know to scroll down either with the scroll bars or with the scroll wheel on your mouse or your trackpad. You can also change pages with the buttons down here. And then on the bottom right, you have the zoom commands. The plus will zoom you in. So my paper is getting bigger. There's no content, but the paper is getting bigger. Minus will zoom it out. And then in between, there's a drop-down menu. You have 10 default zoom magnification commands in here, and you can customize those. There's an option to do that. And you also have fit page in window, which makes the entire page fit in the window to see the whole thing at one time. Explore the interface on your own, look up workspaces, create a workspace, and then make sure you save it. That's going to give you a head start using FrameMaker. So once you master the interface and you've got your workspace set up, you're ready to step into a FrameMaker document and start working within FrameMaker. One of the first things you'll be asked to do is to add content to a FrameMaker document. And there are 3 ways to add content. You can start by just typing in text directly into FrameMaker. You can copy and paste content, or you can import text into FrameMaker from a Word document. And then once the text is there, you're going to be asked to format it. And you want to use styles for that. FrameMaker has paragraph styles and character styles and table styles and object styles. You want to assign styles to format your content. It's not only one-click formatting, it's also consistent formatting, because those styles control the way every element looks in FrameMaker from page 1 to page 2000, or however many pages you actually have to work with. You want to avoid overrides and you want to avoid manual formatting. That's really important. Let's go take a look at that. So we're back in FrameMaker. This is the welcome screen, and most people in FrameMaker work with templates. If you are in an office where FrameMaker is already being used around you, or maybe the people that use FrameMaker have already left and you're the only one left who's stepping into that role, whatever. If people have already been using FrameMaker in your office, I can guarantee you there are templates that have been created for your office that you want to locate and use. If you happen to be somebody who is the first FrameMaker user in the office, you either have to create a template or you're going to have to use one of the templates that FrameMaker comes with. Or I've got a whole webinar on templates. You can locate some other templates as well that you might consider using. So in this example, what I'm going to do is use one of FrameMaker's default templates. I'm back on the welcome screen. I'm going to click on Explore Standard Template, and I'm going to go ahead and choose the chapter template from the user guide. Lots of templates in here. Here's what it's going to look like. And I'm going to click Create, which is going to give an empty version of this document with the template in place. Now, in FrameMaker, a template is going to control all of the formatting decisions for you. It's going to have the paper size, the margins, and the columns, and how all the paragraphs are going to look, and how you're going to emphasize things, and how your cross references are worded. Every decision is made for you. All you have to do is add content and then use the formatting as intended. So in this particular template, it has 3 separate frames. That's somewhat unusual. You don't see this very often, but these are 3 frames that are interconnected. So if my cursor is sitting here and you can see it blinking and I press the Enter key, it's going to move to the next frame over. And the first way to add content is just by typing in content on the keyboard. I'm not going to keep that. The second way of adding content is to copy something from another location, potentially an email or Word, and paste it in. You know how to do that, so I'm not going to demo copy and paste, but certainly works here. And the third way is to import the content directly into FrameMaker. If you have any content that needs to come from another program into FrameMaker, the way we do that is File, Import, File. So again, my cursor is sitting here at the end of flow marker. That's a Pilcrow, end of paragraph. This legal section symbol is the end of flow marker. My cursor is sitting here at the end of flow marker, and I want to put in some text that's been delivered to me in Word. So I'll go to File, and then I'll pick Import, and I'll pick File. File, Import, File. Now, you can import all sorts of formats into FrameMaker. This particular folder has the 3 things I'm going to be showing you today. I've got one Word document, a docx file, I've got one Excel spreadsheet, and I've got one Illustrator graphic or piece of art. And what I want to do is bring the Word document first into FrameMaker. You always want to look at these 2 radio buttons on the bottom, and this is worth writing down. As a general rule, we copy text into FrameMaker, but we link or import our graphics by reference. So text, which means Excel and Word, we copy into FrameMaker. Any graphics, we use import by reference, which links it. Now this is text, we're going to copy, and we're going to pick import. FrameMaker is going to make a copy of that Word document and leave the Word file intact on your hard drive and bring it into FrameMaker. But on the way in, it's going to ask a couple of questions. This one says, I don't know what kind of file this is. Could it be Word? Yes, it is. So I'll click Convert. It always knows what kind of file it is. And then the second dialog box that comes up is beyond the scope of this particular webinar. I do have another webinar that covers this. But just to let you know, there's a more advanced feature out there called style mapping. If you know Word well, and if you use styles in Word, you can map those styles to styles in FrameMaker. And your file will come in just about fully formatted, which is super cool. But today we're going to skip that, and I'm just going to click OK here to let the content come on in. Now, I would say maybe half of my students know what styles are before I start explaining them. The other half have no idea what I'm talking about. So let me take a minute to talk about styles with you. The catalogs that are sitting on my screen over on the right-hand side contain styles. The paragraph catalog has the paragraph styles. These have logical names that identify a paragraph's role in a document, and then the definition for what they're going to look like. So what does a level 1 bullet look like? How about a level 2 bullet? How about the beginning of a body paragraph or a continuing body paragraph? How should the headings look? Those are all paragraph styles, and paragraph styles always format an entire paragraph with a single click, all at once, every time. We also have character styles for text within a paragraph. We have table styles for tables, and then it's not up here, but we also have object styles for frames and graphics. 4 different kinds of styles in FrameMaker. These catalogs would be set up if you're using them in your template, and you probably are using at least the first 3. Object styles are used less frequently. That's why I don't have them up on screen for this intro webinar. But they're out there too, and they're worth looking into if you're interested. Now, this particular paragraph that says general description is not very exciting looking. And once it's in here, whether it was typed or copied and pasted or imported in, it needs to get formatted. And you do not want to manually format. You don't want to highlight words and then go digging through the menus and or toolbars and start clicking different things, because that's not only a lot of work, it's going to be inconsistent, because as humans, we make mistakes, we forget things. Maybe your headings are supposed to be bold and italic, and midway along the way, you forget about the italics and they're just bold. They look different at the beginning from the end. Just not a good way to work. Styles give you consistency. And a paragraph style lets you put your cursor on the paragraph, head over to the paragraph catalog, and click the name of the type of paragraph you're working with. Now, this is a heading, and I've got 4 heading levels here. If I click heading 0, that's the top level heading. It could be a heading 1, or a heading 2, or a heading 3. But in this case, it's a heading 0, which is the chapter title in this document. It's nice and big and looks the way it's supposed to. That was a single click. Now I'm going to put it back to normal for a second. Normal is Word's default style. That's why it started out as normal. And I want to just take a second to explain that it's really critical that you use styles. Not a great way to work, but the only way to work, because FrameMaker uses these styles for all kinds of things. Here's an example. There's a header area right here that's completely empty, because it's waiting for you to identify the chapter title. And once you do, it will collect it and put it in the header. And until that happens, it's going to be empty. So I'm going to scroll back up again and say, hey, you're going to be the chapter title. And I click on heading 0. And when I scroll back down again, it saw that I did that and it's pulled it in. Same thing happens with the table of contents. A table of contents is a list of headings. They have to have the heading styles assigned, or you're never going to be able to create a table of contents with a list of headings. If they're all normal with overrides, they're not going to work. It's not optional to use styles. It's required to use styles in FrameMaker. Now, once you get that concept, it becomes a little bit tedious, because you've got to assign every paragraph. And so I'll do the first page with you, and then I'll go open a file that has everything done. But for example, this paragraph right here, that's going to be a body begin. I'm going to format it like a body begin. And these 4 paragraphs here, these are going to be level 1 bullets. And this is going to be a body begin. And then I'm going to grab these 4, which are definition terms and definition descriptions. I'll click on definition description to assign that to all 4 of them. And then I'll come back and say, but not you. You're going to be a term. It's going to bold it. And rocket-based flight is going to be a term. And then another heading shows up. So I'm going to click that heading and say, not you. You're going to be a heading 1. And then I would just need to continue through the document assigning those styles. Yes, it might feel tedious, but that's how it works. Somebody somewhere is going to have to tell FrameMaker what paragraph is using what paragraph style. And let me tell you, it's way quicker to do a single click on a paragraph and a single click on a style name than to manually format all the individual properties of each of these different paragraphs. So it's going to be quick. I'll be right back with this document fully formatted. Okay, I went ahead and assigned the styles to all the other paragraphs in here, so everything is formatted. And what I want to do now is zoom out so you can see 2 pages at once. I'm going to drop down the magnification menu, choose Fit Page in window, and I want to show you that I have this H1, heading 1, and it's 1.1 and 1.2 on these 2 pages. As I scroll down, you'll see it's 1.3 and 1.4. And you might notice there's big empty gaps on the previous pages, because this particular heading 1 has been told it must start at the top of a column. Now, if that's the template decision, then stick with it. Don't change it. But I need to also teach you some things about how FrameMaker works. And so I'm going to show you how you can modify a template. Be careful doing this in your office. Your coworkers are going to get mad at you if you start changing things. But this helps you understand how FrameMaker works, and that's why I'm doing it. So there's space right here for 1.4 vehicle structure. It just has been told not to go down there. So if you assign a style, you can see the style name in the catalog. This is the paragraph catalog. This is a paragraph style, H1 heading 1. You can also see it down here in the status bar, all the way down here. It says H1 heading 1. It might be small, but there's an H and then a 1, and nothing in front of the H besides the Pilcrow and the colon, meaning paragraph style heading 1. That means that 1.4 is using the style as defined by the template. If you want to modify a FrameMaker document, a FrameMaker style, you do that with one of the designers. And there's a designer that goes with each of the catalogs. The catalogs have the styles, the designer controls what they look like. Most users are not changing the look of the styles. I've been really clear on that. This is just a teaching opportunity. I'm not suggesting you mess with your styles and your templates. But if I open up the paragraph designer, I've got 8 different formatting categories. I'm going to click on the pagination category and take a look. Sure enough, 1.4, which is using H1 heading 1, has been told to start at the top of a column. If I think, no, that one shouldn't start at the top, it should be down here. It's told to start anywhere. And if I click apply, it's going to move down so that it appears after that other text. That might look great, but here's the problem that's not clear to a new user. When you use the apply button, you're introducing an override. And you can see that an override has been added because either you know the template so well, you know that's not doing what it's supposed to do, which is be at the top of the column. But also, if you look down here, right under my mouse, there's a little star. It says star H1 heading 1. And that star means there's an override. The more overrides you put in, the more paragraphs you make look different from the way they were intended to look. And I don't know about you, but I cannot manage 2,000 pages of overrides in my head. For that reason, I have a rule. I don't use overrides. I do not use overrides. I always change the definition if I need to make a change. I don't change one paragraph to look different. This one is using an override. This one is not. This one is still sitting at the top of the column. And check out these guys up here as well. They're still at the top of the column. Now, if the intention is to actually change the template, I can click on that one that I played with and I can update the style. And that says, hey, FrameMaker, this is the new definition for this document. Every heading 1 can land underneath the previous paragraph. It does not need to be at the top of a column. And so watch it reflow when I do that. I'll click Update Style. And now FrameMaker has updated all 4 of these and any others in this file so that each of these land where they would naturally. So I showed you how to add an override with the Apply button and how to remove it with the Update Style button. Don't use overrides. Don't manually format. That's a really important concept. Let's do a little bit more with styles. If you decide that you want to emphasize some content, that is done with a character style. I'm going to zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. So if you think certain words are really important, maybe engine is super important, you want it to stand out. Paragraph style is going to control an entire paragraph, all the words of a paragraph. A character style is going to be found in the character catalog, and it only impacts what you highlight. So if you want those words to stand out, you could pick a style from here. Let me go ahead and grab emphasis heavy. And maybe I want the words propeller model to also stand out. I could click on emphasis heavy. Those are character styles. If you don't like what they look like, again, as a new user, don't change your template. But the character catalog has the styles that you assign to the document. They're modified in the character designer. And then if you decide that you want to add a table, let's say a table coming from Excel, you could import that in separately. So I've got my cursor sitting at the end of a paragraph. I'm going to go to File, Import File. We just did this. You're doing it again. File, Import File. Remember I showed you there's an Excel spreadsheet waiting for us to find it. This is text. Spreadsheet is considered text. So we're going to copy into document and then import. FrameMaker will ask a couple questions on the way in. Is this an Excel file? Yes, it is. How do you want to convert it? I'm just going to say remove any of Excel's formatting, and I'll pick import. And then the raw table shows up. You don't need to retype anything, and that's another really important concept. If something exists, you can import it into FrameMaker, or worst case, copy and paste it into FrameMaker. I prefer to import. Now, styles are being used here as well. The first thing I would do in this table is I would assign a table style. So paragraph styles impact paragraphs, character styles impact highlighted text within a paragraph, and a table style is going to control the actual table. And so this particular document has two table styles. It has one called table bordered, and the other one is table shaded. One click formatting that table. I think I'll go with table bordered here. And then Excel doesn't know about how FrameMaker handles titles, but a title is typically in its own little frame above the table. This is part of the table style. I didn't draw that frame, it just showed up. So I can just drag and drop to put the content in there. And then one of the toolbars I think is super helpful that I like to have on my screen, this is going to be under View Menu Toolbars, is the Table Formatting toolbar, because it has buttons that help us format tables. And so I don't need this row anymore. And there's a button up here that says Delete Row. Not that one. That one says Delete Row, and it gets rid of that row. Now, this row is a heading row for the table. So I'm going to use a paragraph style. Yes, I'm in a table, but I still have paragraphs, and paragraphs are always formatted with paragraph styles. So I come along over here and say, hey, you're a cell heading. And then everything else in this table from that point down would be a cell body. And there's a button to select the cells. So I can click a button to select everything else. It's not a heading row yet, so that didn't work very well. Let me come down and just pick up these cells. Instead, I'll make them a cell body, and I'll come back and explain what I did wrong there. And then there's an empty cell down here, so I'll get rid of that one. Look at me getting the right button the second time. There we go. That looks good. And this one should be a table title. Here it is. There we go. Looking good. I'm going to make this table a little narrower so it fits in the main column. There we go. Something like that. You can see it coming along. And something to be aware about multi-page tables, they will repeat their table titles automatically on the second and subsequent pages. So you'll notice it says Table 1, NASA Software of the Year Awards. That's repeating automatically. But this particular row would be very helpful to see on the second page of the table. It's not repeating automatically because it needs to be designated a heading row. So if I click on that row and I find the button up here to select a row, I could right-click it and tell it to convert the selected body row to header row. And once it does that, I've got to reassign the cell heading. There we go. You can see that repeats as well. Now, that particular feature I just showed you, where I selected the top row and did a right-click to convert to a heading row, that's only in FrameMaker 2022. Most of what I'm talking about in this class could be any version of FrameMaker for the last 5 or 6 years, maybe longer. But that's a new feature. So it's little, but huge to me that it works so nicely. I want to take a moment to backtrack to explain a button I clicked that didn't work the way I expected it to. My mistake, but it's a teaching opportunity. So let me go ahead and explain these buttons up here. If my cursor is inside a table and I have the table formatting toolbar open, these first few buttons are selection buttons. The first one will select a row. If we keep clicking it, it selects down. The second button will select a column, an entire column. And if we keep clicking, it selects across. What I did earlier was I put my cursor in the body rows of the table and I clicked button number 3, expecting it to just pick up the body rows and not the heading rows. But I forgot that I hadn't designated the top row as a heading row, and that's why it didn't work. So once we've created heading rows, this button number 3 is really handy to pick up the body rows in a table, but exclude the heading rows. And my intention was to select all these and then assign the cell body style, but I had to make the heading row first. Okay, that said, let's get back to what we were doing. If I decide, I don't really like the formatting for this table, there's table styles. I can again try a different table style. Your templates are going to have table styles in that table catalog. You find the one you want. If for some reason you have to change one, you know that's going to be in the table designer. But new users that are working from a template typically don't want to be changing things here. Looks good. I could micromanage this a bit and I could be here all day because I'm a perfectionist and I can't let go until things look good. I think this column should be a little narrower and I think this column should be a little wider because that text doesn't look so great down in there. That's better. I can live with that for now. I'll go ahead and save that file. There's a save button up here, file save, Control S, whatever you want. We'll save it. And we're in pretty good shape now on using styles. We know what overrides are. We know we don't want to be using manual formatting. Let's continue on now and let's talk a little bit about the headers and footers and the master pages. So next up on the top 5 things to understand about FrameMaker is that the master pages are used to hold the repeating elements in a document. Think about the items that repeat at the top and the bottom of all the pages, page numbers, headers, footers, repeating graphics. Anything that's going to show up in the same place on every single page shouldn't be added manually to every single body page, but instead once to the master pages so that it will appear automatically on the body pages. I know these are new terms for a new user, body pages, master pages. Let me go explain that. And before I go, I'll be showing you 3 things: that you can have static text on the master pages, you can use variables on the master pages, and also you can have repeating graphics. So with that in mind, let's go take a look. So here we are back in FrameMaker, and I'm going to go to a Fit Page and Window view. I'm in the Zoom menu down on the bottom right. I'll click Fit Page and Window, and now I can see all of page 1. And because it's a right-hand page, it slides to the right-hand side. FrameMaker page display is dynamic. If there's room to show left and right pages, it will. If there isn't, it just shows you one at a time. It just adapts automatically as you're working. Stressful for a new user, but nothing to worry about at all once you understand that's what's happening. At any rate, we've talked about how we can work with the text on the page, but I haven't identified page 1 as a body page. Body pages are going to hold the content that changes as you move through the document. And body pages are what the reader is picking up your document to read. They want to learn about the content that appears on these body pages. It's going to change from page to page. But then in the header and footer area, you'll have information that repeats in that same spot on all the body pages. And that's information that's going to go on the master pages. What's confusing for a new user is they can click on body page content and they can change it, highlight it, type over it, delete it, bold it, whatever, but they can't access the content in the headers and footers and they have no idea why. So I'm going to scroll back up to the top, and this particular document, this particular template has multiple master pages. Any new double-sided FrameMaker document is going to have a default left and a right master page. That's going to contain the information that appears at the top and the bottom of all the body pages. And so if you look at pages 2 and 3, these are both using the default master with information at the top and the bottom. Not doing a great job scrolling. There we go. So top and bottom. Those are the default masters. But in this document, page 1 looks different. It has a different look. I talked about how it has these 3 frames where content flows through those frames. That's not on every single page. And so that's a custom master page. And down here, it has the same information that the other pages do. I will notice that either as a mistake or perhaps a design decision, the line that we see above the footer isn't appearing on the first page. I think I would have it be consistent throughout. That's me. You get to decide for yourselves. But I'm thinking this line should have been also right here, but I can't get that line to copy it because it's not on the body pages. So I'd like you to look at the view menu with me. The view menu controls what you see on screen, and the last 3 commands in the view menu pertain to the pages in FrameMaker. Now, reference pages are beyond the scope of this 1-hour webinar, but we've been on body pages ever since this webinar started. But we've been adding content and formatting content on the body pages. And now I want to look at the repeating information, which again is going to be on the master pages. So as I navigate to the master pages, I'm looking at 2 custom master pages, 1 and 2. So I'll scroll back up to the top and show you the default master pages first. This is the default left master. This is the default right master. The names appear in the bottom middle of the screen. So if I click on the left page, it says left 1 of 6. If I click on the right page, it says right 2 of 6. These are the default masters. And each of these pages has 3 frames. There is a background frame at the top that holds the header. There is a background frame at the bottom that holds the footer. That's the information that's repeating. And in the middle is a template frame that just shows you where the content goes on the body pages. We don't put anything in there. If we did, it would just ignore us. So really what we're caring about right now is that we have access now to the running heads, which is collectively refers to the headers and the footers. If I were to click on, let's say, the right page header and type in my name, Barb, I'm adding static text. There's nothing dynamic about my name. You saw me type in those 4 letters, but FrameMaker sees that I did that. And as I return to the body pages, that's View, Menu, Body Pages, and I go look at pages 2, that's 3, 5, 7, etc., you'll see my name is appearing at the top of all of the right body pages because I added it to the top of the right master page. These are automatically assigned. Any content you add automatically appears. Now, if I think, why would I do that? I don't want that to be there. Can't delete it here. I have to go back to the View menu and go back to the master pages, and then I can just select my name and delete it. So you can put in static text you type in yourself, but FrameMaker is really powerful and it can do a lot of the work for you. Your templates are probably going to work by themselves without you messing with the master pages at all because somebody set them up and they probably knew what they were doing and set them up correctly. But if you're looking at the other content you see here, this is all being handled with variables. The term variable means things that are going to change. So we use variables for content that changes. For example, the running head, running HF1, is a running header footer variable. And if I double click a variable, anywhere, anytime, click, it will open up the variables panel for me. And it tells me, yeah, that's the running header footer 1. And the definition is paratext H0 underscore heading 0. And that means in English, hey, FrameMaker, go get the paragraph text of anything styled with a heading 0. I showed you this earlier in this webinar. If that first paragraph that said journal information wasn't styled as a heading 0, it didn't appear in the running head. This is why, because this is telling it to go look for a heading 0. If you're trying to figure out how your templates are working, you can double click each variable and see how it was set up. So that's what that one's doing. Now in the middle here, there is a user variable. If I double click it, a user variable has a blue gear to separate it from the maroon gears that are in front of all these names. This is a part number, and this is the pretend part number for this document. If I want to change this part number, I could click the edit button, and I'll just change the part number to 1, 2, 3, and then I'll click update. Watch the footers on both of these. I'm changing the definition. It's going to roll through the document. It's changing it here, but also every place it was being used. So that would change throughout the footers on every single page of this entire file. That's pretty cool. There's the modification date. This date will let me double click it so you can see it. Modification date. In this particular format, if you're working in Europe and you want to inverse the month number and day number, you can certainly do that by editing this variable. This will update whenever the file is modified. And there's also a page number variable over here, and that puts the current page number on there. So that's how the master pages work. And in a template, they're going to be set up. Now, I did mention that I didn't like that there was a line missing from the opening page of the document. This line right here is what I think ought to be there. So I'm going to click it, right-click it, copy it, close the variables panel, and then I'm going to scroll down to the next spread. And this one is called Cover Book. That's the cover for the book. This is the first page of the section. And as long as I have that page active, if I right-click and I paste, FrameMaker always pastes things in the exact same spot it came from. That's already in the right location. And it's already on page 1 when I get there. So if I go back to the View menu and I go back to the body pages, sure enough, it's going to be right there on page 1 when I get back. That's what the master pages are all about. And one more thing I want to say out loud while you're thinking about it. The chapter numbers and the page numbers will typically start with 1 in every document that you're working with, unless it's already been part of a book. That's fine. Don't worry about the numbers. As long as your numbers are set up correctly on the page, you want to be using auto numbers. On the footers, you want to be using variables. As long as you put them in correctly, which your template should have, they'll all show 1 or some random number if they've been used elsewhere until you put them into a book file and you stack them in the right order and you say, okay, go update the numbers. At that point, they'll all increment consecutively. And I cover how to work with books and numbering in webinar 3 in the series. So if you want to learn more about that, that's definitely a possibility. All right, so that's master pages. So when you're working in FrameMaker, you might find you need to add some graphics to your documentation. I want to show you how to do that next. And it's really important that you don't copy and paste the artwork into FrameMaker. You want to always link it and you want to anchor it. Let me show you what that looks like. So back in FrameMaker, when you want to add a graphic to your FrameMaker documentation to help illustrate whatever concept you're talking about, you want to begin by clicking an insertion point to put your cursor where you want to add the graphic. And then once the cursor is blinking, you might press the Enter key to create a new paragraph, or you might not. You have choices about how you're anchoring the content. I would say most people I work with do press the Enter key and then make a new paragraph. So I'll go ahead and do that. And then you import the graphic. And the command I typically use is File, Import File. That's my preference because I can use that command to import anything into FrameMaker. Any text, any graphics can come in through File, Import File. Now, graphics fall into so many different categories. You might be working with line art like Adobe Illustrator files. You might have photographs. Perhaps they were cleaned up in Photoshop on the way in. Maybe you've got CAD files, computer-aided design files. Maybe you've got movie files, MP4s. There are lots of different formats that FrameMaker understands, but all of this works essentially the same way. You put your cursor where you want to add your artwork, and then you select the file you want to bring in. And then you always want to stop and look at these 2 radio buttons at the bottom. I know I asked you to write this down earlier, so look at your notes. When you're bringing text into FrameMaker, as a general rule, you want to copy that into the document. So Word files and Excel spreadsheet files, those are text files, copy. But graphics, we don't copy. Typically, we are going to import graphics by reference, and that means we link. And we're doing that for 2 different reasons. The first one is because it keeps the FrameMaker file smaller. We link to those files, and so as the FrameMaker file opens up, it finds those graphics and opens them up, puts them back when you close the FrameMaker file. So that keeps the FrameMaker file size small. Big files get sluggish. But it also means you can edit the graphic files in the original programs. This is an Illustrator file. If I were to open up Illustrator and make a couple of modifications and save it, when it was already being pulled into a FrameMaker document, the next time FrameMaker opens, it would see the updated file and load it immediately. 2 major benefits for this instruction here. You want to import graphics by reference, that means link. And then I'm going to click on Import. Now, the default for importing a graphic is to anchor below the current line. You can change that default if you want to, but that's how it starts. And this might look fine the way it is, but I think there's probably too much space between this paragraph and the graphic itself. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that hard return. And many templates are going to have a style at the top of the paragraph catalog that says something about an anchor. When I click on anchor image, that hard return marker, that pilcrow, and its anchor, which is the upside down T, are going to get really tiny. They're still there. They're sitting right in that corner, but they're so small we can't see them. That might have been too quick for you. Let me click on body content. That makes the text bigger. I'll put it back to anchor image. It's going to make it smaller. And the point of an anchor is this. If somebody says, hey, you don't need this paragraph right here, and you press delete, then the text is going to scroll up and the picture is going to move up automatically. Now, if you have a caption, it can be sitting on its own line directly underneath the image. And look in your template, you probably have a paragraph style to handle the captions. Mine's called figure caption. When I click it, it's going to format it correctly and move with that text. And just to be clear, when you're anchoring these graphics, it always means that they move with the edits. So you saw me remove a paragraph. What if I come up here and start adding text? I'll just press enter, 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 enter. But what you can see is that because of the anchor, the content is moving together through the document. So as I add more and more text, it's going to continue pushing that down through the file. There is a webinar on anchor graphics. I believe it's webinar 10. It shows all the different anchoring positions. If you're working with anchored graphics, you want to watch that to learn more ways of anchoring. This is the primary one, but there's lots of other ones. So let's wrap up this webinar by learning how to export to a PDF. Most people know that you can use file print to create a PDF from absolutely any application, FrameMaker included, but you'll get a better PDF if you use either File Save As or the Publish Pod. I want to show both of those to you. And I also want to take this time to remind you that you always want to keep the FrameMaker files. Even if you think the files are completely done and they're ready for distribution, you're going to make a PDF and keep the PDF forever. You always want to archive that FrameMaker file, because if somebody comes back to you in a year or 2 years or 10 years and says, hey, let's work on that FrameMaker document again, if all you have is a PDF and you've lost that FrameMaker file, you're going to have a lot of work ahead of you. So always archive the FrameMaker file. All right, let's go look at how to create a PDF in FrameMaker. Here we are back in FrameMaker for the last time in this webinar. And in this segment, I want to show you how to create a PDF. Now, as I said, any program can print a PDF, including FrameMaker, but you'll get a better PDF if you use either File, Save as PDF, or the Publish Pod. Let's start with Save as PDF. I'd like you to observe that I'm not asked any questions about the PDF besides what I want to call it and where I want to save it. I already have one in here because I did a test before I recorded this. And so when I go to save it, it's going to say I already have one. Do I want to overwrite it? I'll say okay. And then it's going to process the PDF. And it's pretty quick. It's already done. When I click on View Output, it's going to load the PDF in Acrobat for me. This looks exactly like the document in FrameMaker. So as I page through it, you can see the file that we put together. And it also created bookmarks in the left column. So I can come over here and use bookmarks to navigate. If I want to read about the history of flight, I could click it. If I want to read about vehicle structure, I could click that. These are all hyperlinks used to move through a document. Pretty quick, pretty easy, but we didn't get to control how this PDF looks. We didn't get to control the compression. We didn't get to control the page it's opening on, or how wide it is, or anything about it. Because when you use Save as PDF in FrameMaker, it's going to use the last settings from the Publish Pod. What does that mean? Let's go back and look. So back in FrameMaker, I'm going to go to the File menu, and I'm going to click on Publish. This will open up the Publish Pod. Now it opened up right in the middle of my screen. Doesn't look very pretty, so let me go ahead and collapse it, and then I'm going to dock it over here. If I make a change like that and I want to keep the Publish Pod in there, I really should come up here and save my workspace again. Remember that command? I can save it again and again until I get it perfect. I won't worry about it now, but if this was a real life situation, I would definitely save it once I added more pods. And then I'm going to open up that Publish Pod, and I want to create a PDF. Now, a quick note, FrameMaker uses the Publish Pod to create a PDF and or responsive HTML5, EPUB, Microsoft HTML help, and basic HTML. I want to create a PDF, so I'll just double check I have the right file, general description. I want to make a PDF, and then down here it says Settings File, Default, and to the right there's a widget where I can change the settings. So I'll click on Change Settings, and then I'll click on Edit, and here are the controls for the next PDF I create. I can choose the preset from here. You might know the preset list as the job options files. There's lots of presets you can use. Not all of these are going to be included with FrameMaker as a default. You can load more. You can also get job options files from your printers. If you're doing commercial printing, they may send you some job option files and show you where to load them. You can control what page the file opens on, what the magnification is, the layout. If you change anything in here, you do want to stop and save the defaults file. So let's say I want to keep it on fit to page, but I want to open up with the cover page. I could do that. And I could come down here and I could do a save as, and I'll just say this, I'll just save this as with cover page, and I'll click save. And now when I make my PDF, I don't have to go back to File Save As PDF. I can, but since I'm here, I don't have to go back across my screen. I can just make sure it says PDF. It's going to use the one I just saved. And this button right here is going to generate the selected output. I just want a PDF. If I also wanted other ones, I could select those and use the next button, but I just want one PDF. I'll go ahead and click it. It's going to do the same thing. It's going to process it. When it's done, it's going to show the button for viewing the output. I'll click it, and here we are. Now you might think that's not a facing pages view, it just shows one page, and that's because it's a right-hand page. But you can see it read the settings file because as I move through the document, it now has facing pages all the way through. So you can control the output. It happens through the publish pod. And you can have multiple settings files in there. I have a client who has one when she's doing print, commercial print, and one when she's publishing it online. For example, you can have as many of those settings files as you want, put them someplace where you can find them again, and then just load the one you want and off you go. That takes care of this webinar. I wanted to focus on what I think are the 5 most important steps for a new user who is in an office where they're being asked to use FrameMaker before they're sent for training. If you start with the interface and figure out how to control it and how to set up a workspace and save it, that's going to give you a good head start. We talked about how you can add text to your document and how you always want to format with styles and only styles, no manual overrides, no manual formatting. We looked at repeating elements and how you can control those. They're on the master pages. We looked at how to add artwork and how to anchor it, but I only gave you one anchoring option. Lots more in webinar 10. And then finally, how to create a PDF to share your files with others. Thank you so much for coming to join us today. It was great to have you. I'll look forward to working with you again someday. Thanks, everybody.